Let's say I wanted to change the color of just this clementine, just the back clementine, and I didn't want to go back into Maya and re-render with a different color. So how can I do that? Well, we created a object ID AOV, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and get our object ID. Layer, press E, double click, change the object ID, hit OK. Okay, so this is at multiply right now, which looks actually kind of cool. But I'm going to change it to normal, and the opacity is also down. I'm going to change this to 100. Okay, so now we have these flat colors. So we can basically color pick each object to mask it out. So I'm going to leave one object ID layer there and duplicate it. I'm going to hide the original. So this is going to be my back clementine matte, basically. So I'm going to call it back, or maybe clem back matte. Okay. So I need to color pick this guy to solo it out. So what I'm going to do is create an effect, a keying effect, linear color key here. So effect, keying, linear color key. Oh, picked the wrong one. Not key line. And okay, so I have this drop down, or what's it called? Color picker. Eyedropper. Sorry, that's the word I want. So I'm going to take this eyedropper, click it, and just click this red color there. So now you can see it's soloed out. I'm going to change my view to matte only. Yep. Okay. So right now, I want this to be the only thing that is showing. So if I go into, okay, this match softness here, I'm going to change this value to something much lower. It looks like 2 does the trick. I don't want it to be too sharp, so maybe whatever the highest number it could be. I think 3. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, we're going to stick with 3. Okay, so this is going to be my matte. Right now, it's like a lot of the other maps that we use using the black and white values. Basically, black says it's going to say this is what I want to isolate, and the white is everything I don't want to isolate. So let's say I want to change the color of my clementine, so I need to create an adjustment layer for that color correction. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new adjustment layer. If I go to layer, new adjustment, call this, I'm going to call this clem back CC for color correction. And I'm going to apply maybe a hue and saturation effect. Okay. So the way with this works is that our matte should be on top of the layer we want it to affect. So we want to control the color of our clementine, so we want our matte to be on top. So we're going to change our track matte. Right now it should be none. Again, if you're not seeing any of this, make sure you have it toggled on in your columns. So I think it's modes. Yeah. So make sure you have modes on. So basically what I want is for it to look at the luma values, so the lightness. And since our object that we want to isolate is black, we want the luma to be inverted. Okay. So here we have our options for our mattes. So we don't have alpha, but we have a luminance. So I'm going to choose luma inverted. Okay. So nothing happened now, but if we start to change the values in our color correction effect, start to see just that object is being affected. Okay. So I don't want to really touch the saturation for this. I want to change the color. So maybe I want it to be maybe a little older. So maybe just subtle, you know, just some variation. maybe a little less saturated. Okay, so if I toggle this on and off, you start to see that difference there. Okay, pretty cool. So again, the matte should be on top of the layer that we want to control the object with, and automatically the matte will, the visibility will be turned off, but for whatever reason, here you can see if I turn Luma inverted and this is toggled on, it'll automatically go to off, but just make sure if this by any chance turns on, make sure the matte is off. Okay. And then maybe I want this under the gamma correct. Yeah. Okay. So now I can just duplicate this object ID and do the same thing with any of these other objects. Just add a linear color key and select any of the other objects. Let's say I want the candle. It's the bright pink, but this is also bright pink. I'm going to create that key again, linear color key. So if I select this, so you see both those items just disappeared. So we're basically going to want to mask out the area that we want to edit. So we kind of have to do a combination of the color dropper and the masking. So what we're going to do is make sure our Luma inverted is on. Okay, so you'll see it's spilling into the other objects. We're going to want to mask our candle CC layer. So we're just going to create a simple mask around our candle. So we can see here that there's kind of an edge where we can see the original candle, and I think that's just in the keying in the matching softness. So we're just gonna create a little softer edge, and we can see those pixels are starting to turn green, and just not too much because we start to see it spill, but just enough so it touches that outer edge. I think maybe like that's good. Okay, sweet. So now we can start to edit this hue to something that we actually want, and something like that. And again, let's say we want it to be slightly more pink, but maybe not that pink. We can take our color correction layer and just turn down the opacity. So this is the original. Maybe I want a little more pink, so maybe something like this. Okay. Alrighty. Alright. So now we have our Z depth. So let's bring in our Z pass. I'm just going to duplicate this, bring it up top, call this Z depth. Change my extractor layer, change it to Z. Mine changes Z for all of them like the others, but there's a good chance that it doesn't change for your RGB, so just make sure if it's not showing up in each of these channels, just go into your individual R and make sure it says Z, 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 okay? And you don't have to change the alpha. Hit OK. Make sure it's on. Okay. So right now we see just a bright white screen. So we just have to add a exposure. So go to color correction, exposure, and just bring this down a bunch. Let's see, -10. Nope, -20. Yep. Okay. All right. So now, as we boost our exposure or decrease, we're kind of think about it like passing a plane of focus just through your Z-axis. So as we boost it up, everything is going to be out of focus, and as we decrease our exposure. We're moving that plane back, so more and more objects are becoming more in focus. Okay. So right now, nothing is happening. Oh, I mean, it's not going to affect any of the blurriness. We have to add the blur. So what we want is to, let's make this a little more. So our black is going to be what's more in focus. So I'm just going to make it a little more. Good. So I'm going to create a adjustment layer. Layer new, adjustment. I'll call this Z blur, and add a camera lens blur. So I'll go to Effect, Blur, Camera Lens Blur, and in my blur map, we're going to add our Z depth channel. Okay, and we can turn our Z depth layer off, because this blur, all we have to do is just have this Z depth layer inputted into our blur map here. So right now the whole thing is just blurry. For some reason it doesn't just work with the Z depth layer. We have to pre-comp the Z depth layer and then it'll work. So I'm going to leave this, make it a 10 for now. So the whole thing is blurry, you'll see. So we have to pre-comp our Z depth layer. So go right click, pre-compose, and make sure you're moving all the attributes into new composition. I think this is the default, leave all attributes in this comp, but I want to move all the attributes into the new pre-comp. So I'll call this is fine, Z depth comp 1, hit OK. So it brings you into this new comp. So in this comp we can still control the exposure, but this is our main comp. So let's see now. So now it should work where you'll start to see this front is more in focus and the back is more out of focus. So if we go into our double click our Z depth comp and maybe mess with this a little more so that our front objects are a little more black, start to see that these objects just start to get a little more in focus and the back is more out of focus. Okay, so we get a little bit of a soft edge around our objects where that focus starts to differ. Just up a bit. Okay. Okay, I think that's fine. So now we have a nice blur. If we invert it, we can see what's happening. So now the back, you can't really tell, but the back is more in focus and the front is out. You don't really want to invert that. We'll see this this dark edge around here. You can just click repeat edge pixels and that should fix that. Yeah, okay. So repeat edge pixels and that'll remove that dark edge. So that's that. You'll notice in my Maya scene, I guess you can't really see it that much. I had like a gobo creating kind of a volumetric light. Yeah, you can kind of see it. You just see more of a volume there. So I haven't been able to figure out how to reflect that in the AOVs, even with the separate light passes. But we can create an artificial kind of volumetric light here. So I'm going to create a gradient ramp. So if I go into layer new, I think I can do it with adjusting the layer. Call this ramp. Oh, if I hit, I'm going to save. If I hit enter, rename ramp, I'll go into my effect, generate gradient ramp. So now this ramp is created. So basically I'm just going to create an artificial light source here. So the light is coming from this area here and kind of dissipating around here. Maybe that's fine. And obviously I don't want it to be white and black, so I'm going to change my blending mode to add. Okay, so now I'm getting this artificial light source here, and I can still, if I click the effect, I can edit these locators here. Okay, so right now it is, it's kind of overlaying on top of the entire image, but I have this Z information from our Z depth pass, so I can actually duplicate this, and I can rename it Z ramp matte, and basically I'm going to use the Z information and have that, you know, kind of make it look more of a volume that goes through our objects. So I'm just going to use our luminance, or maybe luminance. Let's see if that's changing. Yeah. So you'll see it's right now it's just overlaid on top. If I do luma inverted, it's taking our white and black values and taking that Z information into account. And again, nothing has to be at 100% opacity, so I can turn that down a lot and still have a little bit of that volume in our light, and just like that. Okay. So that key light is, yeah, it's still way too bright. Maybe I might bring that up a little bit. Wouldn't be that harsh. And you can see here that there's a kind of a sharper line where this light is ending. So what we can do with our ramp layer is just add a mask around where that light is ending. So I'm just going to draw a mask with my pen tool. Right now it's adding on this area. I want it to subtract. So if I go into my mask, I'm going to change this mode to subtract. And now I'm getting an even sharper line. I'm just going to change my feather. It's like 200. Yeah. Maybe 250. So now I'm getting a nice fall off with that light there. Okay. Even more actually. I'll change that to even more of a, hit M, go into my drop down, 500 maybe. Yeah. Alright, so that's a nice fall off there. Maybe I'll turn that opacity down even more though, like 40. Okay. Maybe since this light is hitting it at this angle, maybe I want a little bit of a darker area around here. So either I can add another ramp, where instead of, if I can add this exact ramp actually, duplicate that, it'll come up the top, and just change the blending mode to multiply, so just the darker colors are coming through. But I want it to be a little more emphasized. So if I go down here, I have this mask on. I'll delete that mask there. Okay, so it's a little darker now. I want it to be a little more focused on this area. So if I hit my gradient ramp, I'm just going to change this location for my black values and bring my white a little down there too. Maybe like that. Okay, something like that. Okay, so we'll see how that looks on and off. Nice. So again, I'm getting kind of a, it's not too harsh, but you can definitely see that line there. Okay, so again, I can create a mask where that line is hitting. Change my mask to subtract, and then feather it out, 500. now I'm getting a nice fall off with that light. Okay. So if I toggle these on and off, you can start to see just by adding on those ramps, not at 100 opacity, they're at like 40. What is this at? 40. They're both at 40, so it's not even that much, but it adds some nice flourish. We can also, instead, if we don't want to use the ramp, we can add a vignette. So if we go to Layer, New, Adjustment, call this Vignette. So if we go, oh, this is using using this as a math, which I don't want. So this is a vignette. Did I create solid just now? No. Okay. I don't know what just happened. But I'm going to go into Effect, Stylize, CC Vignette. It's going to create a uniform, kind of a circular vignette. Start to see it more there. So that's kind of doesn't really make sense with my lighting. It's kind of like too focused. So I'm going to blur it out a little more and just change the center so that the darker parts are coming more on this side because the light is coming this way. So I'm just going to change the center point. Kind of focus our main objects too this way. And then again, with anything, we don't want to overkill, so I'm just going to turn this opacity down to like 30 maybe. And we can see even with that at 30, we're getting a nice subtle focus around our objects. So with any of these, we don't want to overkill it. We want it to be just subtle add-ons, just to further tweak our look and where our eyes and focus. We can also add some color correction for the overall image. So if we create a adjustment layer, we'll call it color correction. Oops, color correction. We can either add a hue effect, or we can generate a fill color and just change the blending mode. I am just going to create let's just do a fill for now. It's a little different. So with our color selected, this is not the color that we want, but I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay and just turn this down tremendously, maybe like 10. So you can see without this, we're kind of getting a greener color here, but now with just I can even turn this down to like 5. Yeah. So I'm getting a little warmer. Maybe make this orange. Okay. So even with that set at 5, it makes that much of a difference. Okay. So you can turn this up way high, but again, don't want to overkill. Just subtle add-ons. Like Photoshop, After Effects has levels and curves and brightness and contrast. So let's say we don't want to use fill just yet. We want to kind of use the values that are already in place. We can go to color correction, levels, and just kind of boost the dark and white values. Is this working? What's happening here? Oh. Can't tell if this is working. Yeah, it's working. Okay. So we have the levels where we can control how light our light values are, how dark our dark values are. We have brightness and contrast. If we go to effect, color correction, brightness and contrast. Brighten up our image. Is this working? Yeah. Because our opacity is so low, that's why it's not affecting. Okay, that's why. So let's turn this down a bunch. 50. So brightness and contrast, you don't really need that high values for it to change the image. Okay, more contrast maybe. Maybe like 10. Okay, so even that's like a lot. Maybe like 5. Okay. And then levels. Level 1. I'm not really liking what that's doing though. But, we have our curves, we can use that too. Basically, a lot of the stuff that we can do in Photoshop, we can do in After Effects as well. So if we want to, maybe we want it to be a little warmer, we can boost the red values in our highlights, and then boost the red values in our shadow. Maybe our darkest points are a little more red. Okay, so we can tweak that a bunch. Maybe less blue. Okay. So we can see even from there it's a little more red. But it's really your choice how you want to use these different effects. So I'm going to have these on separate ones. So this is going to be brightness and contrast, and then this is going to be, so you can just copy and paste different effects. So this is going to be that warm color there. Warm. I'm just going to turn that opacity down to 5. Okay. Okay, so you can really do a lot of different stuff. Adjustment layers are good. And then to export your images, I think you can do composition. So you can save frame as, go to File, and then you'll have these settings pop up. Go to Photoshop, you can change this to PNG sequence. Okay. I think because I did save frame as, it'll do just one image. Let's just double check. Okay. Yeah, I think it'll do just the first image. Make sure you're saving in a spot where you know it's going to. So it's going to do save, render. Yeah, so just did that one image. Make 8, 12, 8, still life master. Alright, cool. So yeah, so when you're done with your comp, you just go to Composition, Save Frame As, File, choose type of image, either PNG or JPEG. Okay.